What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. Thank you very much for tuning in today, and we're back with another edition of the betting show as PFL starts. A lot of fights this weekend. We've, as I said, PFL, the UFC. We have a bit of Octagon as well to dig our teeth into, but I'm going to concentrate mostly on the PFL today, but a bit of UFC as well. And we look at some of the bets from Octagon also. After the joy and amazement and brilliance of the plus 1200 Sean O'Bannon bet last week, it was 2 weeks ago. It is back down to earth this week with a bang here, as a lot of these bets went against us last week. We hit one, which was good. We have Brandon Moreno wins by decision, plus 130. For a guy who was a relatively big favourite, to get a plus bet out of him again is pretty good, but our other bets didn't hit. The one I had over in WoW FC, Patrick Lahan, he ended up losing that. A bit unfortunate. I think the fight went 2 rounds. I thought it was 19-19. He could have been down two rounds on the cards, but the referee and the doctor stopped it after the second. Again, I thought it maybe could have been let go. It was, his eye was bad, all right. It was close to being closed, but anyway, I think the biggest issue with that was, and I didn't realize it at the time, and probably, reflecting is probably why we shouldn't give bets from some of the other and maybe not as reputable, or not reputable is not the right word, but as famous promotions, because this fight was actually like 2 weight classes up from where he normally would fight, and if I'd known that, I probably wouldn't have given you the bet, so my apologies on that. But yeah, plus 140 was too good of a price for me to turn down, but it didn't work out well in the end. Then we had the Rosas Jr. fight to not go to decision at plus 117, and it did go to decision. Yeah, I'll be honest, that one, not a great fight. I was hoping for a little bit better. Well, it wasn't that it was a bad fight, but I don't know. Raul Rosas is 20 and he's a good fighter, but I think he's been doing it long enough now. He needs to maybe go to that next level, or he's going to stall out a bit in his career, but still only young. But anyway, and then Drew Dober. Someone was getting knocked out early in that fight. The under was too small, so I went for Dober because he was the better price, and he was the one that got hit. So there you go. And then the Piper fight for the flyer didn't happen. So that's unfortunate. Not a great week last week. But positive vibes coming into this week. We're back. And I have another Irish flyer for you this week. So maybe you'll hit the game this week. Can we recreate the magic of 2 weeks ago? Let's see. First though, the overall record. We're exactly 50% now. 26 from 52. And we still only hit the one flyer, but it was a plus 1200 flyer, so it makes up for the other 8 that we we didn't get right. So that's all good. Right, let's get to it. I'm going to start with the PFL. And the first bet I'm going to give you this week is, and again, so last week we gave you all plus bets, and again this week we're going with all plus bets. We'll talk about the flyer in a minute. My first 4 bets, I'm going with 2 lads who I think are underdogs and will win. And then we're going with 2 lads who I think are mispriced. So keep that in mind here as well if you're betting on this or you're taking my advice or whatever. And I'll tell you as we go along. But okay, first bet, Adam Borics at plus 155 in his fight over in the PFL against Jesus Pinedo. And I just think this is a pretty good matchup for Adam Borics. This is one of those fights as well that, and I'll have a preview for this card as well, so if you want to hear more about this card, this is one of those fights where it's a Bellator versus PFL true meeting. Borics has fought once in the PFL, but he fought against Enrique Barzola, who's a Bellator fighter as well, a UFC fighter, and everything's hard to fighter. So he hasn't come up against, I'll read him from Pinedo's, it's your Bragas, your Jenkins's, your Loughnans, and the like. He hasn't fought those guys yet, I suppose, to give us a yardstick of where he is versus those guys, and vice versa as well, I think, for Pinedo. To talk about both of them, Pinedo's game, southpaw with, those kind of low hands, very good movement on the outside and nice low kicks and that kind of wide stance, the big whipping shots and head kicks and all of that and side kicks. And I think Borics is one of those guys that is the opposite of that. He's your straight up jab through the middle type of fighter, but also, and I know when he came through a few years ago, a lot of people said this about him, but he's like how you'd build a fighter maybe these days. He has the straight up technical game, but he adds a bit of flair behind it. The big knees, that Aaron Peacock flying knee, we all remember. He's had a few flying knees in his career, not in a while now. He's had 6 wins, have all been by 5 wins have been by decision and 1 loss as well by decision. But and this very well might be a decision as well. I would be, I'd probably be surprised if he didn't win this fight by decision. But the way he fights and the way he has adjusted his game to be maybe a little bit less of the flair and a little bit more of the technique, I think maybe that will benefit him in a fight like this. Because, excuse me, Pinedo is kind of just slightly offbeat style. I know it's not massively, like he's a good style for MMA and has been very, very effective with it throughout the last few years. But I think in certain fights like this, I remember what fight was it we were talking about a few weeks ago, but anyway, like, just the technical fighter will often win. I actually said about Drew Dober last week, but it didn't go long enough to find out. And maybe Drew Dober was at a stage of his career where we were never going to find out. But anyway, we'll leave that to where it is. I think the technical ability of Borics might be enough to see him through here. And as well, you look at Borics and where he is in his career. At 31 years of age, he's now going to be fighting in this tournament and hopefully have 3 fights this year, after having 2023 off and, not fighting a load since, he fought 3 times in 2020, 1 in 21, 2 in 22, including lost, none in 23, and only 1 last year as well. He'll be hoping to get back to winning ways here and hit the ground running in the PFL season. And I think that makes for what Adam Borics is good at. Because again, I as I said, I think the more technical fighter, being a more technical fighter, has benefited him. But if he can blend them a little bit, those big flying knees with the technique against Pinedo, that'll be good for him. The flying knees part will work, but also the technical part will work against the guy who's that little bit more kind of hooky, should we say it? And like the guys he has beaten, like Burnell, Kennedy, Sanchez, Hamill, Curran, Pico. Is Jesus Pinedo as good as them? No, he's a very, very good fighter, no doubt about it. But Borics has beaten better fighters than him. And like the only guys he's lost to are Darian Caldwell and Patricio Ferreira, and we know how good they are, obviously. So I think Borics is again, this isn't one of the underpriced ones, although I do think he is underpriced. I think that plus 155 is a great price on Adam Borics. I like him to win here if he's, injury free and can come in and be the technical fighter against Pinedo. Again, I think an issue for guys like Pinedo as well. He's been fighting a lot in the PFL, and it's funny, he's only had 4 fights in the PFL, but it's, it feels like it's spanned an awful lot, and he's been out for that year as well, and he was due to fight last year, wasn't he, and didn't end up fighting. I just feel like things are pointing towards Borics in this fight. So that's bet number 1 of the week. Adam Borics plus 155. Bet number 2 is an interesting one, and I'm kind of picking this one on feel a little bit as well. And it's a good price. So I'm going for Giannis Bachar at plus 150 in his fight with Masayuki Kikuri over in PFL as well. Now, Bachar 9-2 in his career, but lost 2 of his first 3 fights in 2016. Has bounced back, went over and became cage warrior champion. I think he was in tough last time out, but didn't manage to get through there. And now he's over in the PFL. And he's going in against Kikori again, who's another guy who fights on the feet. Never won by submission, but has won 7 times in his 10 wins via knockout. Been knocked out once himself as well. You know, his last 2 fights in a row, 3 of his last 4 have been via knockout. But I think this is a bit of a jump up in class as well. And like watching bits and pieces of him, he is a guy who's a lot more, you know, a lot more active, I think, than Giannis Bachar. And I think that will benefit Bachar. And even if it doesn't, like, I think, like, Bashar's the type of guy, we saw it, like, that O'Neal Brown knockout is one of the best knockouts you'll see. It's only 50 seconds in, but it feels like he spends that whole 50 seconds waiting. And when you have that much power and are that dangerous, you know, you're a real handful for a lot of people. And the thing about him as well is he doesn't just have it early, he carries it. Like when he beat Carlo Pedersoli Jr., I'm just checking here, it was in the 3rd round he finished him. You know, he finished another one of his opponents late in the 2nd round. He's another 3rd round finish in his career. You know, for a guy who's only had 9 wins, that's, you know, a lot of 1st round finishes as well, don't get me wrong. I think he's had 4 in his career. So, this is one of those ones, watching little bits of both of them, it's clear that neither of these guys have kind of been tested to a level which will show how they'll get on against maybe other people in this bracket, or, you know, so this fight is at welterweight. Like, Mukhamed Berkhamov, Umalatov, Storley, like, these lads have never been tested at that level yet. Like, not even close to it. So for them to get to that, to get to this position is big. But also both of them, I feel like, are in the exact same position where, like, well, can they make it? Are they good enough? Is what they've showed yet going to be enough? You know, probably not. They're probably going to have to climb another bit. But the point I'm making here is that the level of one's wins versus the other is a real determining factor for me when I look at this. And I look at Bachar, and I look at O'Neal Brown and Carlo Pedersoli, and I'm thinking, I looked at some of the guys that Kikori has fought, and, you know, again, not bad fighters in there, but I don't think they're that level. Like, we saw O'Neal Brown fighting a few weeks ago. Again, this guy is really, really good. I just think the style that Kikori fights with, where he goes for big shots, and, you know, a takedown will probably be thrown in there as well, make no doubt about it. But I think if Bachar can stuff anything, just get this fight on the feet, get this fight standing, and lure him in. I think he can land that big knockout, and if he does, or land that big shot, if he does, I think it'll be a knockout, because the power he carries is absolutely scary for welterweight, and he could be. Bachar could be a wild card here. The only thing I would say with this, and, you know, please count on this when you're betting, is if Kikori doesn't give him it, Bachar will keep looking for it. You know, the 3rd round finishes are part of that as well. So, like, it might happen early, it might happen in the middleweight, it might happen late, but it might never happen either. You know, Bachar is one of those guys who waits and waits and waits, and you know, he can put himself in harm's way as well by being wild. But sometimes sometimes you just gotta back those wild men and go for it. Do you know what this reminds me a little bit of now? And it's probably not the best thing to say, but this reminds me of the Drew Dober bet a little bit last week. Although I think maybe I'm taking the other side of it here, hopefully. But I think he's gonna bash with some big shots early, and if they land, it could be real trouble for poor old Masayuki Kikori. So we'll see how that one goes here. Right. Next bet, also from PFL, and then I'll hop over to the UFC. This is one, okay, the next two, so are my, I'm betting the money bet here. And I'm going, even though, and again, let's keep this in account for a lot of these PFL cards. I might pick one guy, but I might bet the other guy based on the price. And this is what I'm going with here, because I'm going with Mukhamed Berkhamov at plus 200 to beat Tad Jean. I just think this price is just too good to let up. It's just too good to look at it and go. So, right. You look at Mukhamed Berkhamov, he's 16-1, 11 finishes in there. The only guy he's lost to is Lorenz Larkin. You know, okay, the guys he's fought are not all amazing, right? But early in his career, he beat Taufeeq Musayev, beat Jesse Taylor back in 2016. Jesse Taylor was a good fighter back then. Beat Jaleel Willis, beat Ray Cooper. Hasn't been as active as the big issue, but like he has some really, really good ability. You know, he's a southpaw, which is dangerous for a lot of people. He's good at keeping it long. Very, very good wrestler when he can. Always a bit nervy at times, right? Which is an issue and could be a very big issue here. But I look at Tad Jean and I think, God almighty, this guy has it all. He's 26. He's 8-0. He looks like an absolute beast. But like, has he fought to that level yet? Like, has he fought to the level of Mukhamed Berkhamov? And he hasn't, right? Been in there with some guys, but he hasn't fought to that level yet. That doesn't mean he can't fight to that level or won't fight to that level. But a guy who's like, I wouldn't say completely unproven, but like, Berkhamov has been proven to a certain level and to a fairly good level. And people might argue, and I talked about this on the previous show, like, Tad Jean is not a million miles away from Lorenz Larkin. Like, maybe Lorenz isn't as fast a starter, but they both bring big power and land. Now, Lorenz maybe more with the left hand and Tad Jean with the right hand. And obviously, Mukhamed Berkhamov lost to Lorenz Larkin. But Lorenz Larkin was also probably, 30 fights in his career at that stage. Whereas this is Tad Jean's 9th fight. I just, like, this is one of those ones where if you look back on it and you saw, God, how is he plus 200? You'd be kicking yourself. And again, this isn't a must bet. This is like a, take a look at it. Look at the circumstances around it. Like, if you were to give me a straight up bet, I'd probably go Tad Jean. But like, you're giving me double the money. You're giving me 2-1. Put on 100, win 200, get my 100 back. Thinking, this it makes my mindset change a little bit. Like, okay, he's good, but if he can weather that early storm, Mukhamed Berkhamov, let's see how good Tad Jean is when he gets to a third round and he's getting taken down and he's tired, and Mukhamed Berkhamov is foot sweeping him here and he's, you know, fighting out of the southpaw stance, but Tad Jean is not used to, and all this. I like it. I like the plus 200. I think it's a good bet, and we're going to go for it as our third bet of the week. The fourth bet of the week is very similar. I'm going for Josh Emmett at plus 260 over in the UFC. I just think it's too high of a price. I really, really do. Looking at the odds here, I was expecting this to kind of move and change around an awful lot, but it hasn't really. Like, so Josh Emmett opened up at plus 240. Best price was around, worst price was around minus 198 about a week ago. And he's come back out again to, I know, some places have him plus 240, some places have him plus 250. The best price is plus 260 here, which is very interesting because people barked on that price and took it. Which I do understand. Like, Lerone Murphy is a very, very good fighter. I rate him very highly. But the only thing about Lerone Murphy and Josh Emmett and this fight is that it can go one way. And that one way is Lerone Murphy going in there and using his technical ability and staying away from the power and probably winning a decision. But it can go another way too. And when you look at plus 260 and UK, again, this is a price bet. If you don't want to bet this price, if you don't agree with me, don't bet it. Don't bet it. But it's hard to look at that price and say a guy like Josh Emmett, who has massive power, who's been in there with some very, very good guys, who's only lost, you know, to the best of the best in the last 7 or 8 years. You know, Topuria and Rodriguez. Now you could argue maybe Rodriguez isn't the best. You know, he's beaten Shane Burgos, Danny Gam, Mirsad Bektic, Bryce Mitchell. Like, I look at this and I see Lerone Murphy's fight against Edson Barbosa and think, by God, he nearly got put out of there early. Very, very close. Or what's the Barbosa or was it the Ige fight? It was the Barbosa fight, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken, it was one of those fights anyway. I watched both of them and I forget I have a terrible memory of like 2 hours or a day ago. But if Josh Emmett hits him that way, he will stay hit. And I I just think that price is too much. Like, if Lerone Murphy can, and I don't think it'll be an early storm that needs to be weathered. I think it'll actually be just to avoid the big shot whenever it comes. If he can avoid that, yeah, I think he'll win the fight. I think he's a very good technical all-around fighter. But I think maybe an issue against a guy like Emmett is like, will Lerone Murphy have enough power maybe to cause Josh Emmett problems? You know, Emmett's only been knocked out once in his career. Will he have enough in his arsenal to maybe bloody Josh Emmett and get him thinking and pull that power from him to, 12 of his fights have gone to a decision. He's won 10 of them, which is a pretty good record for Josh Emmett. But go with me here. Will Lerone Murphy have that? And I don't know if the answer to that is no or yes, to be honest. I would venture, I think he'll have a lot of that, I'll be honest. But this is do you know what this is? This is a doubt bet. I just doubt it. After seeing him being knocked down hard and nearly finished in the last year, after seeing what Josh Emmett, now the issue again, Josh Emmett is 40, and sometimes the power is the last thing to leave you, absolutely, but if everything else leaves you, the power won't do you much good against a guy like Lerone Murphy. If you give me a straight up bet, I would probably use it on Lerone Murphy. I'll put it to you that way. But by God, Josh Emmett is a live dog here. There's no doubt about it. He is a live dog. And I think you look at the record, right, of Josh Emmett, and he's only, again, seven knockouts in 23 fights is not a huge amount. Let's put it that way. But I feel like he is a guy who will know at this stage of his career that that's how he's going to win this fight. It feels like he's gotten a little bit smarter. And, he did it against Bryce Mitchell. Again, and I'll say this again, this is probably why he's a bit of a better price. He hasn't done it a whole lot. He hasn't done it a whole lot in his career, especially recently. But I think he was fighting up levels, for a lot. And you could argue this is fighting up a level again. But Lerone Murphy has shown weaknesses. And if Emmett lands that shot like Lerone Murphy took in previous fights, he could very, very, very well put him out. So that is it. Bet number 4 is Josh Emmett. These bets could ruin my record here, but I don't mind. I'd rather give you good prices, I think, than give you bets that are like minus 300. Oh, I'll give you a minus 300 bet and it'll definitely win. Nah, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Right. Let's get to the flyer. My flyer is plus 475 this week, and it's an Irish double of Rhys McKee and Nathan Kelly. Rhys McKee plus 150, Nathan Kelly plus 130. Nathan Kelly is fighting in PFL against Taehyung Kim, and Rhys McKee is fighting over in the UFC against Daniel Frunza. Let's talk about the Rhys McKee fight first. Look, Rhys, this is a massive fight for Rhys McKee. He has had 4 UFC fights so far. He's lost all 4 of them. Look, one of them was to Hamza Chimaev. One of them was not too long after to Alex Morona. That's going to be tough. Went out, knocked 3 people out in a row in Cage Warriors, picked up the title, then came back in, lost decisions to Angelusa and Chidi Njokwani. Watched back that Njokwani fight, and I think he probably won that fight, to be honest. It was close, but he could have won that fight. Chidi's gone on and won 3 in a row since then. Looked very good down at welterweight. So I think that's a good sign of where Rhys McKee is. If you look at that part of it, that's definitely a better yardstick for his quality than maybe looking at him being 0-4 in the UFC. But this is last chance saloon for Rhys McKee, and it's massive. Like every fight outside of the UFC, he has all of his wins outside of the UFC have been finishes. 13 wins, 13 finishes, 10 knockouts, 3 submissions. And he's gone in a guy here in Daniel Frunza who has only 1 decision in his career. Has been submitted twice and knocked out, not 8 knockouts in his career for him. He's 31 years of age, 6'1". It lists Rhys McKee here as 6'1" as well, but I think that might have been when Rhys McKee was 17 years old or something, because he's certainly not 6'1" now. Frunza is a guy with a big overhand and big power, and is tough. Very, very tough. Tough as nails. And he will go at Rhys McKee. He will throw his shots. And I think that's manna for heaven from Rhys McKee. He doesn't want the guy who's going to be trying to take him down. Frunza, I watched a few of his fights as much as I could find. He has a takedown in him the odd time, but maybe not necessarily what he wants to do. Maybe it's more the fight hitting the ground than takedowns. But he's a guy who wants to throw that overhand. He is open and he gets countered a lot, but usually it's his strikes that are the tougher fights, that are the tougher, harder strikes. That the same could be said for Rhys McKee in his non-UFC fights. Like in the UFC, he's, apart from the Chimaev fight, obviously, like the rest of his fights have all gone to a decision. So it's not like he's been overwhelmed and destroyed and knocked out and beaten by guys. Three of his 4 fights have gone to decision. The Chimaev fight, was the Chimaev fight. We all know what happened there. I think if Rhys McKee goes in here and fights a Cage Warriors fight, I think he will have a great night against Daniel Frunza. I really do. And the straight up betting price as well, I was going to give him as one of my straight up prices, plus 150. I think it's a really good price. Like, the bookies are looking at this based on him being 0-4 in the UFC and him struggling there so far, somewhat, But he's a very, very good fighter, and he's good enough to get a win in the UFC. And I think Daniel Frunza is the type of matchup that he'd exactly want. So I think that's a good price. And then the second part of it is Nathan Kelly. As I said, he's fighting Kim. And the reason I think he's a plus 130 underdog here, and this price has kind of moved and changed around as well over the last while. He lost his last fight, and he only lost it in January. But before that, he was on an unbelievable run. He'd won 11 fights in a row, beating, some good guys like Dimitri Salmis, Jose Sanchez, Ben Ellis, who was, if I'm not mistaken, his win over, oh my God, my guy whose name I can't think of right now, but I'll pull it up here in a second and I'll tell you. But, some really, really, really good wins. Nick Bagley, he beat Nick, and that was actually before the Nathan Kelly fight. And Nick Bagley's an absolute beast. He's been in there with some other good lads as well. Manny Akpan beat Kingsley Crawford. Anyway, back to Nathan Kelly. That last fight, he was winning the fight against Ahmed Magomedov, who's a real good prospect, had been out for a while, but got caught towards the end of the round. Then took it into the second round. I don't think he'd recovered. Ended up getting finished there. Quick turnaround. It's only, 3 months almost, to the day since that. So it's a quick turnaround here. But, his opponent is a good fighter, but watching him, he's very, very straight up. He's a southpaw, which will bring its difficulties, and he definitely does hit hard. He's good on the ground, and he went in there with Kadim Magomedov, who's the best opponent of his career, and he won. He wasn't able to hold him down or anything like that. I think for Nathan Kelly, he's going to have to hold him down and submit him pretty quickly, I think. But I think he can do it. Like, his jiu-jitsu is so good, Nathan Kelly's, it's underrated. I think he knows this is a massive fight in his career, because lose this, you're out of the tournament straight away, as we know, straight knockout. And it's a very different glow on where he was after winning 11 fights at the start of the year. And I like that price an awful lot. Watching Kim, I think he is open and is limited somewhat. Like, if Nathan Kelly is not on it, I think Kim is good enough to beat him, no doubt, and that's why he's the favourite, no doubt about it whatsoever. But I think if Nathan Kelly is on it, if he is recovered, if he looks like he did previous to the last fight or in the first round of the last fight, I think it's a good matchup for him against Kim, to be honest. Now, that can quickly turn around, and I could look like a fool saying it's a good matchup for him. If Kim comes out and he delivers and he hits hard and he maybe gets a takedown in there as well, he could quickly turn, as fighters at this level or fights at this level often can. But I believe in Nathan Kelly. I think his mental strength will see him through here. I think he'll have recovered from the last fight, and I think he is again a very, very good price coming in here. So the Irish double plus 475 for Rhys McKee and Nathan Kelly. Those are the 5 bets for the week. Let's jump through and pull out a few other fights here. We'll go PFL first, because we looked through most of that so far. I like Jason Jackson at minus 205, to be honest. But again, a little bit torn in that fight. If it was any bit higher, I wouldn't even think about it. And I'd like it a little bit better, to be honest. Logan Storley Umaladov, I think Umalatov wins, but he's minus 300, so not amazing there. I think Kabalayev wins as well, but he's minus 700, so we're not much into that one. And then, you know, we've talked about the rest of the fights there. The UFC, the UFC is the UFC this weekend. I always like Pat Sabatini, and I like him as an underdog. He's plus 180 against Joanderson Brito. But Brito is a tough dog on the ground. But I like Sabatini. I'd probably go for him at plus 180, to be honest. This Kovratius Ramius, pretty impressive recently. He's the underdog in that fight. Kinian Chekwu against Martin Budde. He's a big favourite there. Do you know one bet I was looking at, actually, and I was going to throw it in, but I didn't in the end. I didn't think, you know, Brad Tavares, Gerald Meerschaert. If you give me that fight at any stage in the last 10 years, I'm picking Brad Tavares. But whereas, like, let me just let me open up Brad Tavares here for a second and let me see where he is at in the last couple of fights. Because, like, yeah, I didn't remember it incorrectly. He lost to Greg Rodriguez, and then he lost to the split decision to Park, where he didn't look amazing in that fight. And you look at the other side of it then, and like Gerald Meerschaert is one of the only guys who has more fights than him, I think, over the last while. But okay, he lost to Rene de Ridder as he's going to, but he had 2 good performances before that. Both last year, fought 3 times last year. And the price is the one thing, plus 210 on Gerald Meerschaert. Would it be worth? No, I think a lot of people have been waiting for Brad Tavares to not be that guy anymore for a while. Is this the point? I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, there's a lot of live dogs. I think Ode Osborne's probably a live dog as well in there, and I always like a bit of Davy Grant. Davy Grant has probably won a shed load of fights as an underdog, so definitely one I'd look at there. And then Octagon, Arnaby minus 250. I do like him in that fight. I do like Lucy Pudilov as well. She's a favourite. The main event, Dennis Ilbe against Max Holzer. Holzer, a big enough favourite there, but you never know. That's kind of a beef fight. I always like Predrag Bogdanovic. He is the underdog in that fight as well. He's around even money, and he's probably the one bet. He'd probably be my pick from the Octagon card this weekend. Not an amazing Octagon card, but my favorite fight on it, actually, you wouldn't be betting on it because Mukhamed Makhachev is a big favorite at minus 575. Not to be confused with Mukhamed Makhachev, different guy. He's fighting Imre Somnes, who's been around the block a while. That's a good fight, but he's a big favorite, so I wouldn't probably touch him there. So that is that for this weekend. Just to recap the bets again: Borics minus 155, Bachar plus 150, plus 200 for Berkhamov, plus 260 for Emmett, and in the Irish double, McKee and Kelly at plus 475. All right, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. Let me know in the comment section below who you're betting on this weekend. What is your one bet for all of these cards? Let me know in the comment section below. But until next week, I shall bid you adieu. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.